Welcome to Sababoosh, the podcast of Milk and Honey. I'm your host, Jake Gillis. Join me in learning about Israeli culture from its movers and shakers. Connect with the Israel you love, or soon will. Welcome back to Sababoosh, the podcast of Milk and Honey. Today on Sababoosh, we're diving into a part of Israeli life that doesn't always make the headlines. What it's like to be a minority in the Jewish state. Our guest is Jonathan Nizar Elkhoury, an influential Israeli-Lebanese Christian rights advocate, LGBTQ plus activist, and a prominent voice in Israeli media. With a unique background as the son of a former South Lebanon Army officer, Jonathan's family fled Hezbollah's takeover of South Lebanon and found refuge in Israel. He now dedicates his life to fostering minority integration and breaking down misconceptions about Israel's diverse communities. His journey from a young refugee to a proud Israeli citizen and public speaker sheds light on the complexities of identity, belonging, and representation in a country often seen through a narrow lens. In this conversation, we explore what it means to be non-Jewish in Israel, the challenges and opportunities of integration, and how Jonathan uses his unique background to challenge stereotypes and build bridges, both inside Israel and around the world. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here and coming on Sababoosh.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
It's really a pleasure, and I think it's a unique episode in that past episodes, when they're on Israeli music or food, the listeners can listen to Israeli music, They can eat Israeli food, they can watch an Israeli movie, but to live as a minority, I'm sure there are some listeners who aren't Jewish and maybe can relate in some ways, but, I'm excited to see through your eyes and hear about your experiences. And just to get started, could you walk us through a bit about your journey here, your time in Lebanon and coming to Israel?
Well, I always say that my life split into two. One is my childhood in Lebanon till the age of 9, and then the rest of my life that was basically begun the day that I landed in Tel Aviv International Airport at Ben Gurion Airport with 2 teddy bears around my arms, reunited with my dad that I haven't seen for a year and 3 months, being taken from there to Naharia up in the north, where many of the South Lebanon Army communities were living, starting a new life in this new country that I had no idea about, new language, new culture, basically starting from scratch because we didn't have anything when we came here, because we basically fled Lebanon. And it's a journey. It's a really interesting, hard, but also fun journey to discover a lot of things, and also to discover about your own identities. It's like a journey of identities that today have become the front line of my activism, of how I act in life, how I do things, how I approach things. But let's go back to the beginning. I kind of jumped up forward. Basically, I was born in this South Lebanon Army village, Christian village. I come from 14 generations of priests in my family. My last name is Elkhourry. Elkhourry is the priest in Arabic. So I always tell my friends, you can call me Jonathan a Kohen. That's like something that is relatable. And I grew up in a war zone because Israel was still present in south of Lebanon at the time after they invaded in 1982. Where basically my dad, as part of the South Lebanon Army, fought shoulder to shoulder with the IDF against the PLO and Yasser Arafat that were terrorizing us in Lebanon, the Christians, the Shia Muslims, the Druze, and other communities that are living in Lebanon, while also attacking Israel in terror attacks and missiles that they were sending over, even kidnapping situations where they entered through the border and kidnapped Israelis and tried to bargain with them. So this is kind of what I was born into. My childhood scenery, I always say, is the IDF soldiers driving by our village because they were present there. The main IDF base was near my home. My dad was with sometimes IDF uniforms because the South Lebanon Army were in full collaboration with the IDF would wear the IDF uniforms. They will train in Israel. I would hear my dad speak in this gibberish language that sometimes me and my cousins would imitate because that sounded really fun. But I didn't know anything other than that. Like, this is what I grew up to. This is what I was born to. And then basically one day when Israel decided to flee, to withdraw from South Lebanon, my dad fled immediately with about 8,000 Lebanese citizens that are Christians or Druze or Muslims that crossed the border to Israel, were welcomed here to get shelter because Hezbollah at that point was already in power and basically started to conquer south of Lebanon immediately after the IDF took over, after the IDF withdrew from the area. And my dad fled immediately because his life was in imminent danger. He was an officer in the South Lebanon Army. My mom wanted to stay in Lebanon because she didn't want to leave our home. She didn't want to leave our family. And she was like, no, you go. The danger is on you. And we will figure it out because maybe the Israeli government with the Lebanese government, they will do some sort of agreement where they will bring everyone back to their own homes without being harmed. But as you can see, the history in the Middle East is a little bit different. Hassan Nasrallah's threats were actually happening to the South Lebanon Army community, where a lot of people were imprisoned, a lot of people were tortured to death, a lot of people are still in prison till today. One of his famous speeches before the withdrawal, 3 days before the withdrawal, Hassan Nasrallah gave the South Lebanon Army soldiers three options. Not opportunities. Opportunities sound nice. He gave them three options. One is to flee with the enemy to their state, that means to Israel. The second one is to surrender to the Lebanese authorities. And we know whoever did that was then sent to a Hezbollah facility. And the third option, I don't know if it's a censored podcast or not, was to be butchered while hugging their own mother. And that created this huge chaos in south of Lebanon where 8,000 people crossed the border, including my dad. And my mom, brother, and I, we stayed in Lebanon for another year and 3 months. That weren't easy at all because Hezbollah immediately after 24 hours took over south of Lebanon. They started entering homes of the South Lebanon Army communities. They will target the South Lebanon Army communities and families. Basically, life in Lebanon became hell because the Lebanese government, like in the 80s when the PLO took over, they were absent. They didn't help, they didn't assist, and Hezbollah just did whatever they want. They made sure that we know that they are the new chief in town and we have to obey everything they do. So my mom decided later on to leave Lebanon and to join my dad here in Israel. I wasn't told anything about it. I was 9 years old and my mom basically told me that we're going to Beirut to be with like some family for some time. We started driving to the area. When she woke me up that morning, she told me to take something important because we might not come back in a short period of time. So then I took these two teddy bears that I had from this huge collection that I owned. Also, I always tell my parents, like, how didn't you know that I'm gay then? Like the writing was on the wall. I had a huge collection of teddy bears. I had a dollhouse. I had everything like Barbies and all of that. And we were two boys in the house. It's not like there were sisters that I can take toys from. But then we arrived to Beirut. We stopped at the airport. To my surprise, we flew to Cyprus, and from Cyprus we came to Israel after 24 hours.
Wow. I'm curious about so many things. I'm wondering, okay, you're in Beirut, then you fly into Israel. In terms of the integration, were you always with the 8,000 other people who came to Israel with you from Lebanon, or were you interacting with native-born Israelis? Like, how did that work?
So for my experience, because I didn't have the same experience as the rest of, for example, the kids of the South Lebanon Army, because they all came at the same time. So at the beginning, the Israeli government set up housing. It wasn't housing, it was like more hotels and stuff like that. Like when a lot of people from the south or from the north were evacuated. They stayed in hotels and stuff like that. That's what they did with the South Lebanon Army back in 2000. So my dad was located in Nahariya in this amazing wooden cabin resort by the beach. So that was like incredible. Although it's a small cabin that it's basically for a weekend vacation, it doesn't suit for like a year and a half of living. But my dad was by himself and there was nothing else to do because they didn't really know what's going to happen. The Israeli government opened a special school for the South Lebanon Army community. That the first year they continued the Lebanese curriculum because they didn't know if they're going to go back to Lebanon. So they didn't want them to miss a school day or to miss a school year that was super important. But then after the second year started, the Israeli government were like, okay, whoever is here probably is going to stay here. And they switched the curriculum to 100% fully Israeli curriculum. But throughout that year and 3 months that I wasn't here, they were taught Hebrew. They were kind of starting to adapt to this new life in this new country. They knew the territory that they live in. So when I came on the 28th of August of 2001, 3 days before the school year started, and apparently my mom planned it that we will arrive here and we will go immediately to school because she wanted us to have some sort of continuity.
Thanks, Bob.
You can't play with my mom, okay? My mom is the best definition for a Polish mom, that everything has to be like a strict thing, that like no waste of time, nothing. We just arrived. Suddenly after 3 days, I have a bag that we didn't pack a bag. So like they prepared a lot of stuff also for us as donations. I had a bag and I was on my way on a minibus to school with suddenly people that I reunited with that were in my classroom in Lebanon, and they disappeared for a year and 3 months. I'm like, where are they? Like no one is there anymore. And then I reunited with them in Nahariya in that South Lebanon Army school. That was kind of amazing. But also, I remember my first experience entering the classroom was I was in 4th grade. I was supposed to be in 4th grade at the age of 9. And I came to that school. They had a letter in Hebrew that I didn't know what it meant because I still didn't know even the ABC, the Aleph Bet. I had no knowledge of anything of what's going on. I see a letter and then I see the number. Letter and a number. I see number 2. And I was so frightened that they put me in 2nd grade. That they degraded me two classes. That was severe. I like lost a whole day just asking every teacher that came along, every student that was sitting next to me, also my classmates from Lebanon, I would ask them, are you sure we're in the right classroom? I see the number 2 written on the wall. It's like the 2nd class. But then like they reassured that it's fine. When I learned the ABC, I discovered that this is the letter Daled. So it's like Daled 2. There was 2 classes in 4th grade. But immediately after about a month, we moved to Haifa. And then I had to start again because in Haifa, we didn't have the sense of community like when we had while living in Nahariya, in these territory where all of us were South Lebanon Army people. Because the Israeli government decided that we should start integrating to the society and start kind of renting homes and living our lives. So my dad decided, I think brilliantly, to move to Haifa because there's more job opportunities. Haifa is a mixed city, and there's opportunities for my mom also to work that doesn't know Hebrew because she just came here. So there's Arab places that she could work at. And we thought that this is kind of like the best place. When I say we, it's like my dad and my mom. But then we found ourselves in between 2 communities when we arrived to Haifa. Because on one hand, we're not Jewish. We're not part of the Jewish community. On the other hand, we weren't accepted by the Arab community in Israel. A lot of them treated us as traitors because we worked with Israel, we collaborated with Israel. They treated us as these traitors of the Arab world, of the Palestinians, of like, you don't collaborate with Israel. especially not against, and I'm putting it in quotes. You don't collaborate, you don't associate, you don't betray your own people. Because they didn't know anything about the South Lebanon Army community. They didn't know anything about how the war started. They didn't know how the PLO occupied South Lebanon and butchered Lebanese citizens the same way that Hamas did on October 7th. We didn't have the media back then. We didn't have people sharing our story. One of the first things that my mom said after October 7th is that this is exactly the same thing that happened to her and her family when the Palestinian Liberation Organization entered their village and butchered people the same way that Hamas did to the Israeli communities in south of Israel. So there's this similarity of like the DNA of survival that I call it, of us kind of like having a same experience and connecting on the desire of wanting to continue on living and having the best life possible. Back to like Haifa, the Arab schools didn't accept us to enroll in their schools because we have Arab schools in Haifa, and we were accepted by the Jewish public schools. I went to a full Jewish public school that is non-religion, and I was the only Arab-speaking kid in the whole school. So I was immediately, this is like the feeling that I felt, that I was immediately hugged by the school, because I had a teacher that would take me almost every day to teach me Hebrew. It took me 3 months to start speaking fluent Hebrew. That was like how fast it was. I spoke better Hebrew than the people that were already in Israel for a year and a half. Wow. And that was incredible in my opinion, because I had no other options. The only place that I spoke Arabic at is at home. And in school, I have no other options. The best thing that happened to me was that I couldn't have, like, I was given the opportunity not to do homework for like a year. And then the following year, the teacher came to me and like, Jonathan, you can't not do homework anymore. Your Hebrew is better than your classmates. Okay? The Hebrew is not an excuse anymore. And then where I discovered that maybe I like learned it too much better, like than I should have. I should have taken my time. But that was like an interesting times to start discovering the Israeli culture, the Israeli society. A lot of students wanted to know who I was. What's my deal? Like, why a Lebanese person that is like going to our class, as someone that speaks Arabic? Because Haifa, although it's a mixed city, a lot of people will not really meet, especially back in the day in 2001, where like public transportation wasn't as much as is today, wasn't more inclusive, wasn't more connected like it is today. In some certain areas of Haifa, you wouldn't meet Arabs except maybe like in the market, but you wouldn't like really sit with them and talk with them, especially for kids. Maybe the parents, but especially not for kids. And for them, it was the first experience that they experienced with someone that is not just foreigner, that was born in a foreign country, but also not from the same religion. So we would have many conversations about it, like where I come from, how's the Lebanese culture. I will have the teacher also ask me, is the classroom in Lebanon the same way that is hell like in here? Because that was like the first shock that I got from Israeli culture, was entering the classroom, and the classroom is in chaos. Okay, I studied in a private school in Lebanon where in 2000, the teacher could have the privilege of hitting you in the face for saying the wrong answer. They will hit you on your arm with a ruler if you interrupted in classroom. Or suddenly I'm in Israel and the kids are just yelling and they're approaching the teacher with her single like first name. That for me was a culture shock. Like I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't figuring it out. I refused to call teachers by their first name till I graduated high school. That's how it stuck with me till like I finished. I'm like, no, I can do that. Like I was growing up on like having to respect that she's not my friend. She's my teacher. This is like something that is like so small, but yet so much different from what I knew, what I experienced in Lebanon and what it's here. So this is kind of a little bit of like the first experience that I had here in the school system and stuff like that.
You mentioned feeling hugged, mm-hmm. like hugged by the school, hugged by the kids, the teachers. Did that translate to friendships outside of school? going to people's houses and, being fully integrated into the school community?
Oh yeah, like we had some school activities. Well, I had some friends that we would usually walk together when we finished school. We would walk because we will all walk for the same direction. My house was like the last house, but we will always like see each other like for the first few times like we saw each other like on the street. We're like, okay, hi. But then like I think the second time was like, let's walk together. So we started walking together. Sometimes we just stand by the park and like play at the park before we're going back to the house. Sometimes we'd go like to buy a popsicle or something like that. So sometimes we'd go because we lived some sort of in the same territory. We would meet in the after hours, in the afternoon. We will go to like a park that is like in the middle between our homes. I'm talking to you about like the age of 9, 10, 11, where like this is something that I also like, although in Lebanon we never stayed at home, like in the house, we would play like in the front yard, but that was different. Now I'm living in a city. During the second Intifada, that was super frightening, yet we also were alerted like to make sure that we don't see anything. And I would walk everywhere, so it was easier than to take a bus. But then, for example, in middle school and high school, that was even more in depth because I didn't go to the same high school like the rest of my classmates till the age of 12. I transferred to a school where they had a bigger South Lebanon Army community. We were about 50 students. We had someone from the school that is responsible to, if we have any issues, any problems, they will immediately assist. They opened after hours classrooms for us to help us finish with diplomas and not have this integration process affect our learning process. Even that middle school and high school, they took it even to the extra length, where in the National Memorial Day for the IDF fallen soldiers, they will give us the opportunity to read the prayer for the South Lebanon Army fallen soldiers. And it would be immediately after the prayer for the IDF, not like in the end of the ceremony. It will be at the beginning. And this school had like more than 1,000 students. So imagine that every year, I did that for 6 years when I was from middle school to high school. I did that for 6 years, reading the prayer for the South Lebanon Army community. We would go to classes because they wanted to know, or we will share our story. I was in theater, so a lot of people knew who I was. I had a lot of friends that are still with me till today from middle school and high school. That was like that's like the amazing process that I went to, where I went through 100% Israelization, you can say, yet I maintained 100% my Lebanese identity, my Lebanese Arabic dialect, the culture that I have, the manners that I have. A lot of people would say they're super Lebanese. And this is kind of the way that I started living. I'm both of these identities. At the beginning, the classmates would ask me, wait, so what are you? Like, how do you identify yourself? And I was like, I don't want to choose. I'm both of them. Like, I can't choose. Lebanon will forever be my homeland, where I grew up, where my house, my home is as the basis of, like, this is the ground that is my family's ground. But Israel is my home. Israel is where I live now. Israel is the identity that I proudly hold and go and speak to about it in more than 10 years all across the world, to share my experience as an Israeli citizen, as a minority inside of a minority. And this is kind of brings up all of these amazing opportunities and friends that stick along for so many years, because you're just yourself, and they're themselves, and we really love each other.
It's not a simple thing. Like, when someone is acquiring like a second identity, sometimes they'll reject the first, or the interaction between the two won't be easy.
Yeah.
So to hear that, you've held on to that Lebanese identity and embraced the Israeli identity is, not so simple. And
well, I had a third identity that I completely ignored, so that helped me base the other two ones and focus on the two. Me being gay, I didn't come out of the closet till the age of 21, so that was like also a huge thing that was also part of me, yet I wasn't able to speak about it because I was so afraid, both because I come from a religious a conservative family, but also I didn't know the situation. I don't know anything about it. I don't have the internet to search, or if I had, I don't have the delete browser that you have today. So that was super difficult to kind of go over this third identity and try to work all these together. So I focused on these two. That's why I think I mastered these two perfectly. Yet I ignored the other one till I was 21 and started dealing with that after I mastered these two.
That's, you mentioned the minority within the minority, and, just adding another element to that whole equation is, I imagine, not easy all the time. But I'm curious about, you mentioned that part of your identity. Have you found Israel? You live in Haifa, so Tel Aviv is really seen as a very, LGBTQ friendly city, and with, lots of events. And have you found the same with Haifa? And even though you didn't live in Lebanon when you came out, and when you started to deal with that part of your identity in a different way, like, do you see Israel as do you feel very comfortable and that now you are able to really embrace that identity, and now that the three are working together?
Oh yeah, 100%. I should add the fourth one, also the Christian.
Oh yeah,
I'm
wow.
ticking a lot of boxes. It's a hard job to make them all work together, because a lot of them contradict. A lot of them doesn't necessarily work hand in hand with each other, especially when your homeland and your home are in actual war a few months ago. So that was like super difficult. A lot of people wanted to know, like, do you feel for Lebanon on how you feel on Israel when they're hit? And I'm like, yes. I know that Israel is distinguishing, and that Israel is targeting Hezbollah territories and Hezbollah terrorists. But at the end of the day, like, I'm afraid about myself here, although we have the Iron Dome and Kera David and all the operation systems that will make sure that we're safe, I'm still afraid. War is frightening. So I'm afraid about my family that is still in south of Lebanon, about the rest of the people that are innocent people that I speak with and support 100% of Israel's war against Hezbollah. So this is kind of like always a concern that always goes in mind. People really want to know, where's your allegiance? Like, are you more Israeli when we're in a fight between Lebanon, or are you more Lebanese? And I was like, first of all, Israel is not fighting Lebanon proper. It's not. It only targeted Hezbollah. It is in Lebanese territories, but I consider them occupied Lebanese territories by the Islamic Republic of Iran. So, by say, Israel is not fighting against Lebanon. It's not fighting against the Lebanese government. It's not fighting against the Lebanese population. So it's super easy to stand behind Israel on its war against Hezbollah in Lebanese territory. And yet, on the other hand, I'm afraid about my family that is here. Me, my parents, my brother, his wife, his son. So this is something that my friends, when the Islamic Republic fired at us ballistic missiles, I had many houses of my friends that were hit by those missiles. It's frightening. And this is something that really sticks around with you. All of these identities trying to connect with each other, all of these identities trying to kind of cope. Yet I feel that I really was able, because I have severe ADHD, so I was able to dedicate each, you can say, I can say 33% of my life up to now, 10 years Lebanon, 10 years Israel, and then now the last 10 years are about me being gay and about my LGBTQ plus identity and about gay life in Haifa, where I remember when I started going to IGY, the Israeli Gay Youth. This is like a secret group for LGBTQ people that a lot of them are in the closet. So we would meet. It's not like AA. A lot of people would think like it's AA, but we do sit like in circles. We don't say like, "Hi, I'm Jonathan, I'm gay," and everyone says, "We love you, Jonathan." It's more like to get to know people that is in the same condition like you. So when I started going there, I started kind of understanding my own identity. Who am I? Like what are those feelings that I'm feeling, not towards women but towards men? And that was something that I started kind of exploring and checking around and asking questions and getting to know about the LGBTQ history, LGBTQ human rights fights and all of that. And my purpose was, okay, everyone is leaving to Tel Aviv at the age of 21 after they finish their military service or whatever. I don't want to do that. I want to stay in this city that is a major city, the third biggest city in Israel, and maintain LGBTQ plus life in this city, because we don't live in one place, and we should be present in other places where people should be already aware that we exist, that everything is all right. And that's why I stayed in Haifa. That's why I decided to stay there. And I feel really comfortable walking in the street with someone that I'm dating and holding hands, depending on the areas, not all areas. There's a lot of like Haredic areas that you shouldn't do that there. There's a lot of Arabic areas that you shouldn't do that there. But in the majority of the city, whether it's in the Carmel Mountain up in the Carmel, or downtown where there's a lot of hipster vibe areas and clubs and bars where it's 100% completely like normal.
Do you feel a sense of belonging to all of those different identities? Like if you meet someone who, similarly is from South Lebanon and like there's that connection, or if you are talking to another native born Israeli and there's that connection, or another member of the LGBTQ community, or another Christian, like are those like, is there a breakdown for that? Do you feel closer even if you've embraced all of the different pieces of your identity? Like, do you feel a sense of belonging more from different parts?
Oh yeah, 100%. And this is why I always say that my activism in the last 12, 13 years was based on these identities, based on me being able to be a bridge between communities and try to tighten that gap of lack of understanding and not really welcoming each other, and people that are from a different religion or people that are from different sexual orientation. So I 100% feel that every time that I meet someone that ticks one of these identities, I can speak to them more comfortably in one identity, but then kind of start a whole conversation from there. This is like a small bridge or like a small rope that will open a road for you to be able to speak with them about other issues, but you have this similarity that you can understand each other based on that one thing and then go from there. This is why I always say people need to bring their identities up front. People need to use their identities. They're a blessing because they let you see the world in so many different layers, but they also can make you a huge connection opportunities with people that you think you have nothing in common with. But you just need to start talking, like digging a little bit. And I'm able to do that because Israelis, we have the Israeli chutzpah. So we immediately ask, where you're from, what do you do, who do you know, where did you serve in the army, or where did you do national service, or where did you do whatever. And then we can connect, because it's such a small country. We can connect on like someone that knows his cousin and like my best friend or whatever. So this is like things that can start connecting us with each other. And this is what I'm trying to do. When I fly abroad to the US, I'm trying to bring the Israeli identity up front, but I use the other identities as a Christian, as part of the LGBTQ plus community, to try bring these communities to the understanding of what I'm experiencing as an Israeli citizen that they don't know about. Because a lot of these communities are anti-Israeli because they have been fed throughout the years that Israel is an apartheid state, that Israel is a racist state, that Israel is a white supremacist state, that Israel is an ethno state that has no equal rights for any other ethnicity rather than the Jewish ethnicity. And so many lies that I've heard about myself also, that I'm a Mossad agent, that I'm a fake Christian, that I'm a Jew in disguise of a Christian. You think about it, I've heard it on my activism on campuses or in other events that I've had, Sometimes I've been beaten. I've had to have a police escort. I've been spat on. Extreme levels of lack of acceptance of me basically trying to say, hi, I'm Israeli, let's talk. Let's try to explain some of these things. I don't see myself as the spokesman of the government because I don't have to be spokesman of a government. And what I do in public diplomacy, a lot of people think that we need to do that. That being in public diplomacy means that you need to back the government. You need to give excuses to the government. You need to explain the government's actions. No. This is not my job. The government spokesman's job is to do that. My job is to show the variety of Israeli culturalism, to show the variety of Israeli ethnicities and religion and way of living, that every community has their own problems, every community have their own issues that they also need to solve, that it's not black and white, it's much more complex. And basically Israel is boring it like any other country, except people just love talk about us. And we have a war. I mean, this is not as boring as you think, but this is it. And this is what I try to bring with all these identities, connecting with people based on them.
Something that I've been meaning to ask. When I made Aliyah to the country, I saw a lot of people with kippot, and I saw restaurants that were kosher. And I've been learning about and loving from afar the Jewish state. When you came to Israel and over the years, like, what's your relationship been with that? Do you feel like, you've embraced these pieces of your identities, you're fully Israeli, like maybe the other is too strong, but like how do you feel about that? Do you feel fully at home? Do you feel...
Oh yeah, Israel is 100% my home. There's this debate about religion and state where, yes, a lot of the laws in Israel, for example, no transportation on Shabbat, that, by the way, Haifa is an exception. Haifa has a different maybe that's why I love Haifa, because Haifa is really the exception in Israel, where there is a different status quo than, for example, in other places. So we do have a lot of restaurants that are open, Arabic restaurants and Jewish restaurants, not kosher, but they're open. You have plenty of also seafood and all of that. So you don't feel... Yes, there is less public transportation. And for example, if I want to go travel, I need to have a car. That this is, I think, we can actually solve in a wider spectrum if we can have like a private transportation system, which we don't have. And it's not allowed to travel on Shabbat because they're not allowed to take money on Shabbat. So this is an issue that needs to be solved, or I don't think I've being discriminated against. It's just something that as a citizen, I found to be less not sufficient is it's not nagish. It's not approachable. It's not something that it's a service that the city is providing or the state is providing that is preventing me from using and any other, by the way, Jews and non-Jews on Shabbat. So that's something that kind of not makes everything worse, but it's like something that just, it's a stick. It's not something that I can say it's racist, it's whatever. No, this is at the end of the day, it's a Jewish state, but it's a democratic state. I walk with my cross on outside, everyone sees it. I've never experienced someone stare at me in a wrong way or someone saying anything to me in a wrong way. I did experience homophobia in some places where I was wearing like a tank top with the word Lebanon on it, Lebanese, but it's with rainbow flags. And someone yelled at me when I was walking in downtown Tel Aviv, by the way, not other places. Wow. In Tel Aviv. There's some parts of the city that are not really comfortable, to say the least. But this is something that at the end of the day you go with, you walk with. Israel is not perfect, and I'm not trying to say that Israel is perfect. I do accept that we have a problem, that we have problems. I do accept that also part of my activism is trying to deal with these issues. I was one of the first outspoken people for the South Lebanon Army community of things that the government have promised for years and haven't stood by it, haven't done anything about it. We would go, I would go on TV and speak about it in national TV stations. I would participate in demonstrations in order to make the change for that. Basically trying to make the change, but as part of being an Israeli citizen. I'm part of this country. I can't deny it. My ID is Israeli. I feel Israeli. My culture today is a lot more Israeli than it used to be before. I love being here. I had the thought a little bit before October 7th, I had like this existential crisis like everyone has at the age of 30 today. And I was thinking maybe this is not my place. Maybe I should go and move to other places. And then October 7th happened, and then I looked around. I'm like, where would I go? There's no other place that I feel more home than Israel, than this place that welcomed me, hugged me, gave me opportunities, gave me the opportunity to be whoever I want, to speak whatever I want, and to believe in whatever I want. And this is kind of the place that I see my future in. This is the place that I want to, find a husband and raise kids with. So this is something that I'm like constantly thinking about. It's not easy because in Israel, there's a lot of, you can say, also in the LGBTQ plus community, conservatism, it's still a thing. So like there's not a lot of mixed couples. So I like when we came here at the age of 9, I find myself sometimes in the middle. From one hand, the Arabic community will not date me because I'm from the South Lebanon Army community, because of my activism for Israel abroad and in Israel, because of my political views. On the other hand, you have part of the LGBTQ plus community that not necessarily will date me because of my political views or other things. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. And in the South Lebanon Army community, we are 3 gay people. So one of us is going to stay single, probably, if we marry only in the community. So there's these issues that you say to yourself, okay, I'll figure it out. Like it will be fine. I'm like, I didn't give up yet. But it's like a constant, it's not a struggle in the meaning of the word struggle where now you're really kind of facing a hard time. But it is some sort of a struggle-y, like Sababoosh, like a struggle-oosh.
Struggle-oosh. Love it. I'm wondering after that really heartfelt and beautiful note about feeling completely home and realizing that you don't want to be anywhere else, a beautiful and heavy thought. You mentioned that like your history now is your culture now is very much Israeli culture. Mm-hmm. Are there any elements of that you're particularly fond of or things within Israeli culture that you admire or love? Either comparing it to maybe like Lebanese culture or just just on its own.
By the way, Lebanese culture is really similar to Israeli culture. When you think about it, the Lebanese are the most closest to the Israelis in their behavior, in their way of living, in like the life culture. Beirut used to be one of the most advanced cities, also like in clubs and bars and all of that, back in the 70s, even more than Israel.
The Paris of the Middle East.
The Paris of the Middle East. The Switzerland of the Middle East, what was Lebanon called also. So that was like an incredible experience to see that. And also today, like I follow a lot of Lebanese like public influencers and comedians and stuff like that. We have pretty much similar like jokes and like way of living. During the war, the Lebanese had the same jokes like the Israelis had while in shelter or like while being bombarded. So that was something that like I felt like it's super similar because I don't know if you remember that in 2019, Lebanon went into the huge demonstrations where they opened pools in the middle of the roads and they just sat in a pool and they like celebrated. They demonstrated, but they demonstrated through celebration. The economic crisis in Lebanon started back then, huge issues with the port explosion also afterwards. So it brought a lot of demonstrations in Lebanon. When I look at the demonstrations of Israel, before the war, a lot of them were like that. A lot of them were like a celebration while demonstrating. We're trying to be positive. We're trying to look at it. So that was like something that I was like, okay, this is super similar. And that's why I think we could be like the best friends of the Middle East, Lebanon and Israel, in that similarity. By the way, I read somewhere that also like DNA wise, the Lebanese are the most closest to the Jewish people and the Israelites. So that was like really interesting to see and explore. But that's something that I really like, that is like super similar in these two cultures. The desire to live, the desire of like, we're sick of wars, we don't want wars anymore. If we have to fight, we'll fight, but we don't want that. And that's really similar to what I have here in Israel. That sense of also connection between people. It was felt strongly after October 7th. Well, suddenly everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what is your religion, no matter what is your background, no matter what is your political view, everyone was sitting next to each other, helping each other, assisting, donating clothes, money for people who had to evacuate. And this is something that kind of shows the beauty of Israel, what I love about Israel. That sense that if you fall in the street, someone will come and help you out. I didn't see that in the States. Maybe in New York is different, but I didn't see that in the States. In New York, people will approach you and like, oh, I love the way that you're dressed. In Israel, they will never do that. But we will speak with people in the street. We will like nod our head. If they're like sitting next to us in a cafe and we hear like something, we will get ourselves involved in the conversation. This is the Israeli chutzpah. I love that. I don't do that, but I love that.
Right. It's fun to observe, like parenting advice, at the playground, or
yes,
all these. Also, like talking about politics.
Why aren't you married? I'm like, get out of my love life. Okay, this is not
right. Someone that you just met or you didn't even meet. They just come up to you.
So, do you have a boyfriend? Immediately, the first questions that I get from people that like I tell them, yeah, I'm like from Lebanon, blah blah blah, and they know that I'm gay. So, do you have a boyfriend? Like, why is it important? Like, you don't see me asking you, do you have a husband or do you have a wife? Like, why is it important?
Do they try to set you up? Is that the next step?
No, not all of them. Some of them did. Not all of them. Some of them were like just Israelis want to know.
Yeah. It's also like, I'm not sure about Lebanese culture, but American culture, you don't ask someone who they voted for or how much they pay for rent.
Oh,
like,
Lebanon,
there are all of these, or religious questions. But here,
yeah. Yeah. I love to say that we always say that in Israel there is no holy cows. You can talk about everything. You can debate about everything. You can discuss everything. Sometimes it will be like a harsh discussion. But there's no holy cows. Everything is debatable.
I really like that.
Yeah.
I also heard something funny on the podcast Call Me Back, that there are no rumors in Israel. Because every time you hear something, it's like, oh, Itai's girlfriend, she was actually there. And there's, like you mentioned, it's such a small country.
It is.
So on this fun note, let's dive into a lightning round. Doesn't have to be rapid fire.
Okay.
Okay, Jonathan, what is your favorite restaurant in Israel? It could be in Haifa or otherwise.
I'm going to say Dunyana. It's an Arabic restaurant, Middle Eastern restaurant in Akko, in the old city of Akko. It's by the port. So when you go, it's by the walls of the old city. The walls that Napoleon tried to conquer and failed, these walls, it's right on top of the wall, and it's an amazing view. You sit there, and the beach is to the left or to your right, and it's incredible. You see like the whole old city kind of, and it reminds me in like one part of Lebanon. I lived there for 3 years nearby that restaurant, and I always felt that I'm like walking in the village or like walking in like this old town that also you can find like similar scenery in Beirut or other places. So I always like felt something there. So Dunyana is the restaurant.
And Akko maybe doesn't get as much love as it like.
You're right.
My parents visited Israel for the first time recently, and we took them to Akko, and it's a fun, unique place that isn't like, of course, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, all these places.
There's so many historic places, and you can also see the layers of people who conquered Akko throughout the years, whether it was the Templars or Napoleon that tried. You had later on the Turkish. So you can find layers of that in everywhere you walk in the city, in the way of the buildings and the way that everything is set up. There's a huge Baha'i center in the city also. And you have have you went through the historic sites to the Templar? There's like a 400-meter long underneath tunnel from the Templar times. There is a Turkish bath that is a museum of like how the Turkish baths used to be. There's an incredible boutique hotel that is called the Effendi, that is also from like a historic perspective. It was preserved, millions to preserve the building, because it's by Israeli law you have to preserve old buildings like that. And they have on the ceiling amazing drawings that were hand drawn back then, like centuries ago, and they were able to preserve them and like kind of bring them back to life. And it's incredible to walk there and see that history in your own eyes of hundreds of years of history just in one place.
That's super, super cool. Favorite Israeli singer or band?
I'm gonna say Sarit Haddad, but I'm biased. Although I didn't listen to any of her new albums, sorry for whoever loves Sarit Haddad, but Sarit Haddad was my favorite Israeli singer that I listened to. When we came here, a couple of days after we landed in Israel, I still don't know where I am. I still don't know a single word of Hebrew. My dad comes with a cassette, and he's like, "This is an Israeli singer. She's the most similar singer to Najwa Karam, the Lebanese singer that was my favorite Lebanese singer. And you should listen to this. Like, you can like, this is like similar to her," because he wasn't able to find back then a Najwa Karam cassette that I wanted to listen to. So he brought me this, and the first song that I've ever learned without even knowing the language was Yalla Lecha Baita Moti. Okay? Come on, go home Moti. Shalom vetoda. Al titkasher elai, ani lo ona. Okay? This is the song that basically defined my Israeli experience. And I'm dying to meet Sarit Haddad just for that. Like, to have this closure that she was like the first person that I've listened to and sang their songs without even knowing the meaning of their songs.
I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like another aspect of Israeli culture and accessibility, you could somehow like get Sarit Haddad's number, maybe have coffee. I
probably can. With my connection, I can do that, actually. I don't know why I haven't worked for that yet. I need to do that.
Say like, this really affected me in this way.
I need to do that.
Okay, and finally, your favorite thing to do in Haifa on the weekend, Thursday night, Friday night?
So almost every week I have date with two of my best friends. We go we have like different places, but we basically sit on a platter of cheese and have Coke Zero. My friends will have shisha. We will just sit there, gossip about all the gossip that we collected throughout the week. It's one woman and one man. There are like three of us are like really best friends. And this is basically it. This is my favorite weekend, to just sit around and gossip.
Thank you so much for joining us on Sababoosh for this eye-opening conversation with Jonathan Elkhoury about being a minority in Israel. Stay connected with us on social media. Be sure to follow Sababoosh on your podcast listening platform to get the latest episodes. And don't forget to visit our website, sababoosh.com, and subscribe to the Sababoosh Substack, where we publish articles on all aspects of Israeli culture. I would also like to ask you to follow and rate Sababoosh on your podcast platform of choice, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or another one. Ratings really help us extend our reach. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope that you'll continue. We have some really exciting guests lined up. We'd love to hear from you. Reach out with comments and ideas to jake@sababoosh.com. Who would you like to see as a guest? Well,